Hello, this is the 282nd edition of Catch of the Day, available on the Branch Talk YouTube channel. Today we're going to continue reading from a book written by Trent Wildy entitled The King of Crisis in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Starting at the top of page 43, we read, "For" connects this verse with the previous verse and would be better translated "indeed." "Now" indicates imminence as it did in the previous verse. Now they must bear their guilt. Thus the words here placed in Israel's mouth are that Hosea imagines Israel thinking when their king is taken from them. He sees them acknowledging that God took away their king for the reason that they had not been respecting him. They would acknowledge that a king couldn't do them any good. The fact that their king would be taken from them is made more explicit later in the chapter. Samaria's king shall perish like a chip on the face of the waters. At dawn the king of Israel shall be utterly cut off. Hosea 10 verse 7 and 15b NRSV. Hosea 11. By now I am sure that you can see how Hosea goes back and forth between decrying the monarchic system and commending the prophetic system. This continues in chapter 11, but in a more subtle way. The prophetic mechanism is less under focus, and the God behind the mechanism speaks as the active agent, leaving the mechanism only implied. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more I called them, the more they went from me. They kept sacrificing to the Baals and offering incense to idols. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with bands of love. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down to them and fed them. Hosea 11, 1-4 NRSV. How did God call Israel out of Egypt? Through a prophet, as we all know, and as Hosea also spells out in the next chapter, 12 verse 13. The point here is that when God leads through a prophet, it is not the prophet leading, it is God. God speaks in such close, tender, loving terms to convey this very point. We are supposed to look beyond the prophet to the one by whom he or she is sent. So soon after leaving Egypt, Israel forgot this important truth. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt?" Exodus 14, verse 11, NRSV. Was it Moses that took Israel out of Egypt? No, he was merely the instrument. God led them. This is precisely why the prophetic system of governance is so important. It is God leading in his compassion. The Lord, the God of their ancestors, sent persistently to them by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord against his people became so great that there was no remedy. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 15 and 16. NRSV. Thus the Lord through Hosea declared, "They shall return to the land of Egypt, and Assyria shall be their king, because they have refused to return to me." Hosea 11, verse 5, NRSV. As we learned from Samuel, Israel rejected God as their king when they made a king for themselves. God wouldn't allow them to keep a king forever. I am sure one reason was that these uninspired kings didn't truly represent him, but they were doubtless viewed as representing him by many Israelites, and by the other nations. The common understanding in the ancient world was that the kings were representatives of gods. The other reason is the one we have spent more time on, that God wanted to lead Israel through the prophets rather than uninspired kings. Unfortunately, in spite of Hosea's pleas, Israel didn't accept Yahweh as their king, as evident from their antagonism toward the prophet. 9 verse 7 to 8. So all God had left when dethroning their king was to let their king be a foreign one, Assyria. In short, they would be destroyed as a nation and scattered to Assyria, where they would be servants to their new king. Yet God has mercy, and he promised not to destroy them completely. How can I give you up, O Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I treat you like Zeboim? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God and not mortal, the Holy One in your midst. I will not come in wrath. They shall go after the Lord, who roars like a lion. When he roars, his children shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling like birds from Egypt, and like doves from the land of Assyria. And I will return them to their homes, says the Lord. Hosea 11, verse 8 to 11, NRSV. While Ephraim, Israel, would be scattered, they would be regathered when they responded to God roaring like a lion. Hosea already used this image of God as a lion. Do you remember what it meant? God's actions as a lion were symbolic of his actions through the prophets. 5, verse 14, and 6 to 6, verse 6. Thus, for the children of Israel to respond to God roaring like a lion is for them to respond to God speaking through a prophet. Doing so is what enables their return from their land of exile, and only those pictured as doing so actually return. Take care.